in relation to the regional weekend in Manchester. This is the highlight of our year, and we all had a great time going to Gibraltar last year, and it meant so much to the community. At the very time, however, we've got very little take-up going to Manchester. We've only got 12 people, which is very, very light. And if we can't get more numbers, we're going to have to reconsider the weekend. So Sharon Bannister is just going to come and address us quickly, and she's going to tell us why we should all come to Manchester and how we can support the community.
Right, so you know that I'm Sharon Bannister. I'm President of the Jewish Representative Council in Manchester. We have about 11 deputies from Manchester who normally attend these meetings. I take it as a great insult that you've chosen not to join us in Manchester for the March meeting. The one in Gibraltar was absolutely fantastic. We can't guarantee the weather like Gibraltar, but we can guarantee a warm welcome. I do hope more of you will reconsider, and it's probably a bit lax. I've not signed all the forms because I know I'm going to be there, but the board don't. So I will do the forms tomorrow morning when I get back home. Please, will you also, I need to be going because the Chief Rabbi's here, he takes priority over me. Please sign up. Also, our dinner the night before, on Thursday, it's our centenary this year, and we're celebrating our centenary. We'd like as many of you to attend that as well, to join us to celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll return to this. Can we all stand to give the Chief Rabbi a huge welcome? I'd like to thank the Chief Rabbi. He is a true man of the community and a very powerful voice for British Jewry. When he was installed as Chief Rabbi, he said he had three great pillars of his chief rabbinate. The first was high-quality Jewish education, the second, building and strengthening Jewish communities, and the third, acts of loving kindness. I think he's been outstanding in his leadership, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing your address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie. President, honorary officers, and deputies. Thank you so much for the invitation extended to me to share some thoughts with you today. At the outset, I would like to congratulate Marie van der Zyl, the President, and the honorary officers for the leadership that they are providing for British Jewry. And I would also like to thank the President, honorary officers, and all of you, the deputies, for your commitment and dedication, for the investment of time, energy, effort, and talent into guaranteeing that our community is admirably represented by you. And all this is taking place at a very challenging time for us and all of our society. This is the second occasion on which I have the honor of addressing you. The first was on the 20th of October 2013, just 7 weeks after I was installed into office as Chief Rabbi. My primary theme in that address was unity. And indeed, I believe that unity must continue always to be a top priority of Jewish communities right across the globe. It is simply inexcusable and irresponsible if we have unnecessary rifts and tension within at a time when we are being threatened from without. Today I'm going to be speaking about unity, also about threats to our community, and then a third theme, the cohesion within British society. So first of all, with regard to unity. A model which I like to present is that of the symphony orchestra. Within an orchestra, one has many different instruments, each one making its own unique sound. Under the baton of the conductor, the sounds blend together to produce perfect harmony. And this is what we should be having within our Jewish communities. We are well known as a people for being individuals who have a passion for asking questions, for probing, for arguing, for debating. But all of that should carry on within a healthy context through which one respects the views of others. And together with those others, under the baton of community cohesion, we will be able to produce community harmony. In this spirit, I made it known from the day on which I became Chief Rabbi that no one would ever hear from my lips any public condemnation of any non-Orthodox Jewish group. It is so important for us to be united. That doesn't mean to say that we must agree on everything, quite the contrary. There are many huge issues on which we do disagree and will need to disagree, but that can be done in a Menschedic way behind the scenes. I like to use the model of the cricketing world. I say that we should all be batsmen and not bowlers within our different Jewish groups. Let us champion what we are about. Let us score the fours and the sixes, showing how proud we are of our particular identity, of what brings us meaning and happiness in life, of what we believe to be authentic. But let's not at the same time try to bowl anyone else out. It is a weakness of human character if one's self-definition does not only include what one stands for, but also includes what one is against. Within the footballing world, you have the type of Spurs-Arsenal or United City or Liverpool-Everton kind of scenario in which part of your identity often is not just the team that you support, but also the team you hope is going to lose. We have no room for that, nor can there be any excuse for that. Within Jewish circles, we need to be the batsmen and not the bowlers. And that certainly must be the way forward. We have to engage in a Menschedic way of life to show that we are always people of compassion, and that is what the Almighty expects of us. In yesterday's Torah reading from the portion of Tetzaveh, the Torah provides us with a description of how the high priest would enter into the Holy of Holies to worship before God, and he did so wearing what we call the choshen, which is a breastplate upon which the names of all the tribes were engaged, and we're told that he would wear these names over his heart. The Torah says, "V'hayu alev Aharon b'vo'o lifnei Hashem." The names of all the tribes were to be upon the heart of the high priest as he came before the Almighty. You cannot come before the Almighty proclaiming yourself to be a religious person if you are detached from your fellow human beings. The ultimate form of service of God must include having everyone at heart, reaching out to one and all with love and affection and with compassion. Yiddishkeit without Menschlichkeit is not Yiddishkeit. And through engaging in differences of view, but within a harmonious context, we can hopefully guarantee a great future within our community. Alas, however, and now I come to my second theme, there are threats to our community. At your last plenary session a month ago, you stood for a minute's silence at the very moment when we were burying 6 victims of the Shoah. It's quite extraordinary how more than 70 years after the Holocaust, we were able to bring to their eternal rest the remains of victims of the Shoah. Indeed, the atrocities of the Second World War happened within living memory. And therefore, it is so tragic that today we are witnessing an increase of anti-Semitism right around the world, and this is affecting us too here in the UK. And it is totally proper that we highlight this, we prioritize this. We fight against anti-Semitism and we strive to neutralize it and to wipe it out. It must be a top priority of ours today, sadly and tragically, but that is the reality. Together with that, we are exceptionally fortunate here in the UK that it's not left exclusively up to our Jewish community to lead the fight against anti-Semitism. It is being led from the government down, and an outstanding example of this is the United Kingdom Holocaust Memorial Foundation's incredible initiative to create a memorial to the Shoah and a learning center in the iconic space of Victoria Tower Gardens, right alongside the Houses of Parliament. And it is my privilege to serve as a member of the foundation, and I can attest to the fact that this is simply an extraordinary opportunity for the British people, through remembering the horrors that befell Jews of the world in the Holocaust. We, through this initiative, will be striving to ensure the stability of British society in the future, to teach about love and affection and about tolerance, striving to ensure that what occurred during the Holocaust will never happen again. And I know that I can rely on your support for this initiative. We've now reached the stage at a time when, in a few months' time, the Westminster City Council will be listening to various arguments and will be making a decision with regard to planning permission. We've now reached the time when it is necessary for us, with a very strong voice from right around the UK, to express our support for this initiative. Please, therefore, I urge you in your personal capacities to go online and within the appropriate portal to write letters of support. And please go back to your communities and to your organizations and encourage as many people as possible to likewise give their support. And I know that I will have the support of the board in this very important initiative for British society. But there's one other thing I'd like you please to do. In defending our community against anti-Semitism, in fighting against anti-Semitism, let's not forget all the great things that are happening to us right now. There is, in truth, another narrative. Life is good for Jews in the UK. Thank God we are thriving. We might be fewer in number than a generation or two ago, but there is far greater Jewish community commitment, and it is finding its expression in so many different areas of endeavor. Let us also count our blessings and appreciate the freedom of opportunity that we have and the blessings that are taking place for Jews and Judaism in the UK at this time. I now come to my third theme. We are gathering here today only some 6 weeks before Brexit. And as yet, we don't yet know what the future of Great Britain will be. There is great concern within the economic world. There is concern within political circles and what this might mean for us all. But I believe we should also be concerned with regard to what is happening and what will happen within British society. We need social cohesion, and we cannot afford to have social unrest. At the very dawn of human life, the Torah describes to us the creation of the world. On each day of creation, we are told that God saw what he had created, and it was tov, it was good. And then on the sixth day, the Almighty created a person and exclaimed, "It's tov me'od, it's very good." So there is a midrash, a bit baffling, perhaps even disturbing. And the midrash says, "Al tikri me'od el mavet." The two words, me'od and mavet, meaning very and death, actually are interchangeable. They sound a bit alike. So the midrash says, instead of reading me'od, very, read mavet, which is death. What's the message for us? I think it's a very relevant message, Because where there is veriness, there is no such English term, but let's just create it for the moment. Where there is veriness, there is the potential for death. Where you are living in a state of ma'od, there can, God forbid, be mavet. Because if one's entire character is one which takes us to the extreme on any particular issue, that in turn can incite passions of hatred, of jealousy, of zeal, which can prompt a person to murder. And that's exactly what we find in the very next passage in the Torah, from the life of the first family on earth, within which Cain killed Abel. Cain was an extremist. He was extremely passionate, extremely jealous, extremely hateful. And he ended up being the world's first murderer. We can't allow our society to veer towards the extremes and to find one extreme pitted against the other with hatred. And when there is hatred in one's heart and it becomes hate speech, that in turn has the danger of becoming hate crime. And we know all too well from our history how easily that can come about within a democratic context. We, the Jewish people, have a contribution of value to make to all of societies. You see, within so many of our societies, people are being prompted and being pushed to have a binary choice between one extreme or the other, between being exclusive or inclusive, drawbridge up or drawbridge down, universal or particular. And we're finding so many societies now being sharply divided between these two extremes. But in our tradition, we actually fuse the two together. We are part of a particular faith. We are exclusivist. We have our own Sabbath, our own traditions, our own customs. We have Jewish kosher food, we have Jewish schools, and we strive to marry within the faith. We want to preserve Jews and Judaism as being something separate from the rest of the world, and we're proud of it. But why do we exist as a Jewish people? God created us as his chosen people. He told us because he is the parent of all of mankind. And he wants us to help the rest of the world take its own expression of action a few notches higher thanks to our influence. We have a particular identity because we have universalistic aspirations. We believe in our Judaism because we are part of all society. It's not that we're at one extreme, pitted against the other extreme, no. We believe that you can be proud of what you are about and at the same time respect others for who they are and strive to live cohesively with them and to reach out with love and affection towards them because all of us are created in the image of the one true God. That's the lesson which we need to get more across within our societies across the globe. Because unfortunately, when there is so much extremism around, and you find it within political circles and social circles in Europe and elsewhere, there is a danger that it can spill out into the streets. And that is why it is so important, deputies, please go back to your communities and speak about social cohesion. Speak about believing in whatever position you have with regard to Brexit, but have respect for others who differ from you. Only over this weekend we've read in the press of how there are certain notable individuals who are well known for their strong positions on one side of the divide or the other relating to Brexit. Some of them have to move home, some need police protection. This shouldn't happen within our society today. We need to have strong and passionate views and to respect others for the views that they hold. There are faith leaders throughout the country who are calling on the members of their faiths today, please, let's spread that word of tolerance, of moderation, of understanding, of respect for other views. We have to avoid social unrest in the wake of Brexit. So therefore, let us concentrate on Jewish unity. Having our differences, whatever they might be, whether it's on Israel or internal community politics, religious differences, let's respect others for the views that they hold, and let's strive always to preserve Jewish unity. As we tackle anti-Semitism, let us be appreciative of the help that we're receiving from others. Let us strive with all we've got to wipe out anti-Semitism in this country, and also to appreciate the great blessings that we have as Jews in the UK today. And let us also contribute towards what hopefully will be a stable and peaceful British future, regardless of the outcome of Brexit. The model of the symphony orchestra is not only one which applies to the Jews of this country today, it applies to all of Britain. We need to have a society which respects difference, a society in which we can engage in sharp different points of view, giving respect to others, and at the same time being mindful of the importance of social cohesion. And as a result, may we in the future, thanks to our efforts and others, be blessed to see a bright, successful, happy, and united British society, one in which hopefully we will enjoy total harmony at all times. Thank you very much. Okay, shall I stay over here? Shall I stay here?
Thank you so much for your words today and for your leadership. You've shown us how, by engaging across the community and understanding and respecting those that look at issues differently, we are much more likely to achieve our ultimate goals. We'll be able to live safely, securely, and happily in a tolerant society with social cohesion, where religious freedoms, freedoms of opportunities for Jews, and Judaism today are those that we all enjoy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Who's going first with reports? Let me finish. I'm going to finish Manchester. No, I'm going to finish Manchester. Okay, yeah. Edwin, when Edwin's finished reading that, can I have it back? But just give a moment to read it. Anyone wants singing that, help themselves. All right. Deputies, can we just return to Manchester? Could Sharon come back to the podium? Where are you, Sharon? Oh. Now,
Sorry.
do you think anybody could give a show of hands who is thinking of going to Manchester but hasn't given their form?
Okay.
Actually, I haven't given my
Okay.
form either.
So can we ask
so-
you? That's much better, thank you.
All right, because we need to have it within 7 days. So Sharon's just going to tell us a bit more about the weekend.
Right. Okay, well, the weekend for me will start on the Thursday evening, because that's when we're having our celebratory dinner. At that dinner, we're producing a book, a history book, of the representative council in the Jewish community for the last 100 years in Manchester. Everybody who attends the dinner will get one of those courtesy free. Then on Friday, the officers, honorary officers and presidents, vice presidents of the board will be visiting several synagogues, but we will then all gather in one for a very good Friday night dinner. Saturday morning will be, again, they're attending other synagogues so that everybody can get to hear what they have to say. Then we're having lunch, obviously, Saturday lunch. Saturday afternoon's yours to do what you want. You can walk to Heaton Park. There's other things to do in Manchester. It's your choice. There's football, there's shops. It was whatever you want to do, that's all available. Saturday evening, the Manchester community will host you. Got a comedian, light meal, great day. Sunday morning, the meeting will take place in the chamber of Manchester Town Hall, the council chamber of Manchester Town Hall, and then we will walk 5 minutes, well, 4 minutes if you walk quick, 3 minutes if you walk at Russell's pace, to Jackson's Row Synagogue for lunch. Jackson's Row is next to a tram station, so it's easy to get back to the station, to Piccadilly, for trains all over the country. We travel every month to come to these meetings. I left the house this morning at about 7:15. I'll get home this evening at about 7:15. I do that every month because I'm a board deputy. Once a year, we go out of London. That's just once a year. This time, I don't have to travel. Other times, I've had to travel to other communities. I don't think it's much to ask all of you, or as many of you as possible, to please try to attend. We'd love to see you all there. Thank you.
So, Deputies, I hope that those of you that hadn't decided to go to Manchester will now be persuaded. It's really important that we're not London-centric, and we want to support all of the regional communities, and it's really important to them, and it's the highlight of their year. So I really hope that you will all decide to get your forms in within the next week so that we can proceed. Thank you. We're going to now move to the divisional reports, and I'm going to ask Stuart if he can present his report first for the F&O division.
Okay, good day. I'll be quick. I'll just start by saying that over the last week I've become aware of the fact that one of the deputies has gone around describing me as our skinflint treasurer. What a compliment. It makes me feel like I'm being called Snake Hips or Elvis Presley. However, you do, all of you, have an opportunity to break the board's budget. Really, please sign up for the weekend. On a certain level, I'm displeased to say that the figure of 12 that Marie quoted earlier was slightly out of date. The last figure I had was 22 of you had signed up. But please come, take advantage of the £50 travel subsidy for those of you who are not in the Manchester area. And I can say that every weekend I've been to has been more than worthwhile. Fun, constructive, the rest of it. Speaking of budgets, the annual budget, the 2019 budget for the board, having been reviewed by the F&O's Audit Working Group and gone back and forth between senior members of the board staff, the HOs and me, was cleared by the HOs on Friday. We will give you details of that by the next, at the time of the next board meeting, but it's based on the usual pretty conservative assumptions. Speaking of money, on the community contribution, our main income source, some of you have been absolutely brilliant even over the last month in terms of getting onto your synagogues or your organizations in terms of trying to encourage more to come to us. Some of you are still not entirely pulling your weight. To help you, there is a new leaflet coming out, a 6-page leaflet that will be circulated to you, and you can in turn circulate and use to encourage people to come in. We're also going to send each of you a letter asking you to just confirm exactly what the arrangements are at your individual synagogues, because there's quite a dispersion of ways in which the community contributions collected. Another couple things, skills forms have been distributed again today. We've had a pretty good response over the last month to the first distribution of skills forms, but please return them. We're already beginning to make use of some of the skills that have shown up amongst some of you. There will be engagement forms coming after that, but please respond to these skills forms if you haven't done so already. And I'm just going to mention that many of you, it's already known to us, have relevant skills and connections that can help us with the President's Dinner that will happen later this year. And there is going to be a working group set up within the F&O, which will ultimately be folded into the dinner organisation apparatus. But if any of you feel that you have the skills or the connections that would be relevant to us beginning an early pursuit of potential sponsors or advertisers for the dinner, please make yourselves known to me or the board staff. Very important. Now, I'll just close with one other thing. We're all aware that, or most of us are aware that there was a report around one of our sister organisations within the community. I can just assure you that our view is, and this is compounded by the fact that no fewer than 30 deputies at different levels and in different ways have sight of and oversight of over our finances. We're pretty satisfied that we are light years ahead of anything that's been recommended in that report in terms of our systems and our controls. In terms of any response to it, there's nothing precipitate necessarily called for, but this is where the fact that we have working groups really comes into its own. We have the audit working group and the risk management group, whose next meeting is on Wednesday, looking at whether we need to respond in any concrete way to that report. But we are we're in very good shape at a systematic level. Our finances are in reasonable shape. As usual, the message is we really need you to represent the board back to your communities as vigorously as possible, just to ensure that we get the income in that we need to keep our activities going. Sorry that's been so long-winded. There was a bit to cover, but thank you. If anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise,
please come to the podium. We're running about 8 minutes ahead of schedule, so you've got plenty of time for questions.
That is not to encourage
deputies.
you to ask facetious questions, Joe.
Joe Millis, Bromley Reform. In light of what you just said, the last part of your report, and in light of the report that came out last Wednesday into the JLC, or the partial report that was published into the actions of the JLC surrounding its former CEO, I noticed that the president of the board, that's you, is a trustee of the organisation and also sits with the JLC in the executive, is it? I'm not entirely sure, but no doubt I will be corrected. Would the president and anybody else in this organisation who sits as a trustee of the JLC consider resigning from that position, and would the board consider disassociating itself and not working with the JLC until the police investigation, for there is one, is concluded, and until the full recommendations of the panel are implemented and the organisation cleans its act up? Thank you.
I guess Stuart's not going to answer that
That's
question.
not really a treasurer's question, but there was no way I was not going to raise what I raised. But I can say that from my point of view, no one's getting into a tiz about anything. We're just looking at this as we look at anything else. We have plenty of mechanisms in place. I don't have a treasurer's answer to give you that because it's not about us.
Stay on an ex officio basis, like all past presidents of the board have been. And I think we need to bear in mind what the Chief Rabbi has just said to us about unity. We need to work with our other communal partners, and no doubt any further investigation will be made known to us. Thank you. And any questions on the F&O report? No, there we are. Okay. Can we please have Sheila to present the international report?
Thank you. Excuse me, am I on? Yes. Thank you, Marie. Good morning, everybody, deputies. Pleased and proud as ever to present a summary of all the activity that the International Division has carried out over the last 4 weeks. Thanks again to President Marie, CEO Gillian, all the other professional staff members and honorary officers who have been involved with the work of the International Division. Thank you all very much for taking this forward, especially Marius, thank you. And happy to take any questions. Thank you, Brian. Lionel.
Please come to the podium, Brian.
When you
Can
met
you state your constituent
Brian
name and
Mark, Jewish Student Chaplaincy Scotland,
Thank you.
when you met with the Labour Party, did you inform the honorary officers before you did so? And can I make this comment? It seems to me that the secret meetings that you and the President had are fair only in the sense that the Black Death is fair. Striking young and old, rich and poor, Jew and Gentile alike, you have undermined the work of Labour members of Parliament in the Jewish Labour movement, my own Member of Parliament, Catherine McKinnell, who I work with, in having those secret meetings. It is a disgrace, it is an outrage, and what it means is that the deputies here are merely wallpaper. We're here to applaud and be fed whenever we're told. But if you want to have meetings with the Labour Party, have the courtesy to tell the deputies before you have them.
Firstly, I'm going to say that the deputies are not wallpaper. That obviously was not a question for the International Division. I want to just say at this point, I think... sorry, I'm speaking if you don't mind. I gave you the courtesy if you wouldn't mind listening to me. I said I asked for courtesy. That's inappropriate, or I will ask you to leave the meeting. The reference to secret meetings is wrong. Private meetings is the correct description, and private meetings happen with politicians all of the time. There's nothing new in that because we have to advocate for the Jewish community. When the time comes for the President's statement, you can ask more about that, or you can ask Sheila, who will give you an explanation as to why she attended the meeting, if that was the question. But I think you ought to allow for an explanation before giving a condemnation. So if Sheila wants to, I'm very happy for her to explain why she had the meeting with Jenny Rathbone and the basis for that. And sorry, if you wouldn't mind waiting till Sheila's given her,
Is that okay,
her answer,
Lionel?
if you don't mind.
Yes.
Do you want to sit down?
Brian, I did indeed have a private meeting with Jenny Rathbone and a member of the board staff at the board's office when she reached out to apologise to the Welsh Jewish community which I represent. It was a private meeting. There was a course of action that she said she would take. We haven't actually seen any fruits of that yet, but following her investigation in the Welsh Assembly government, she was readmitted to the Labour Party. We're very unhappy about that, and I have written in very strong terms to Mark Drakeford, who's the First Minister in the Welsh Assembly government, and we now have a meeting with him, which will not be private, which will be very publicised next month. I hope that answers your question.
Can I just say also, these things are a matter of judgment. If the community in Cardiff and the rabbi in Cardiff wanted to see Jenny Rathbone because she was their local member for the Welsh Assembly, that's a judgment decision that the community took. It's all very well us in London saying that shouldn't happen, but it is very difficult if you have to live in the community and they want to try to seek some sort of resolution. So I just ask you to bear in mind that this came from the local community. Sheila didn't just offer to go and meet Jenny Rathbone. It came from a direct request from the rabbi, who had considered it very carefully. And of course, Cardiff United is a member of the Board of Deputies, and we have to listen to them and take into account their views as well and what they feel works best for them locally. But the board utterly condemns her being readmitted to the Labour Party, and Sheila has explained that she has written in that respect. I think Lionel's standing.
Yes, thank you, Lionel.
Sorry for you waiting.
Yeah.
Lionel Koplowitz, Senior Past President. President, before dealing with an issue on the International Division report, I am rather surprised that both in the International Division and the Defense Division, they didn't have a meeting at all during the last month. And I think it's absolutely fundamentally important that each division meets before a board meeting so that members of that division can have the chance to speak about the issues involved, and that can be incorporated in the report. I think it's absolutely important that the divisions meet before board meetings. Now, coming to the particular issue I wish to raise, it says under Europe, International Relations Officer Marius Bischoff, whoever that might be, attended a lunch with the German ambassador Peter Wittig. Now, first of all, if the board has received an invitation to a lunch by the German ambassador, they didn't send it to Mr. Bischoff. To whom was the invitation addressed? That's the first question.
Okay, do you want me to answer that? Do you want me to hear your next question? Okay. Marius, would you stand up and make yourself known, please? Lionel, meet Marius.
Thank you.
Marius received this invitation. He works very closely with all the embassies and their diplomatic staff, and the invitation was sent to him.
But I still haven't got the answer. To whom was the invitation addressed?
It was sent to Marius.
Oh, but surely there's
just to explain, he's a professional staff member, and because he's recognised by various embassies as a professional staff member, he was given a personal invite. I think it would have been quite discourteous for him to refuse.
No, but I don't know what's wrong with it. Whether it's my hearing or what, but I can't hear a word of what you're saying.
I think it might be your hearing. I'll try and speak louder just for Lionel. Marius is a professional member of staff. He works regularly with embassies, and in recognition of this, he received a personal invitation to go to an event. I think it would have been discourteous of him to refuse to go on behalf of the Board of Deputies, having received an invite.
Well, if I can carry on then from that question, it seems a number of rabbis were invited by the German Foreign Office to come to Germany. Who selected the rabbis? To whom was the original invitation addressed?
The embassy selected the rabbis.
Pardon?
It's not the job of the Board of Deputies. The embassies have selected the rabbis.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Name and constituency, please.
Peter Bohm, Southend and Westcliff Hebrew Congregation. I'm pretty sure this comes under the parameters of International Division. If it doesn't, I'm sure you'll send me back. Many of you will be aware of the legislation currently being proposed by the lower house of the Republic of Ireland, which seeks to criminalise those within Ireland who purchase products from certain areas within Israel. A counter-campaign has been started, which I initiated. I hope the board will endorse it, but if not, at the very least, perhaps can arrange to have discussions with the Irish Embassy. The campaign goes by the neat acronym called BROIGUS, Boycott Republic of Ireland Goods and Services. Unfortunately, I didn't have the literary competencies to make up one for Frunzeld, but nevertheless, there we are. So if the board has it in mind to seek to challenge the Republic of Ireland diplomats or embassy, would you do that? And may I ask that I be invited along?
Well, can I say on this, when the new ambassador to Ireland had his first day in office, he had the best day he was likely to get, because I, together with a number of people, and Isaac Herzog, came to his house for breakfast, and we were discussing BDS. He's aware that he is in a very, very difficult environment, and we have indeed said that all our support, anything that we can do, will be given. So we all have direct contact with him, and of course it's of great concern. So he's doing everything that he can, but it is a very difficult environment.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Peter.
you for your question.
Tal.
Tal of the Chigwell and Haynolds. The Chief Rabbi spoke really beautifully about the Holocaust memorial. And last week, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, visited Poland. And unfortunately, in Poland, we see quite a lot of Holocaust revisionism in legislation. He made some comment, which he then backtracked about the involvement of Polish people in the Holocaust. I wanted to know if you're going to make any kind of representations for the Israeli embassy about why the Prime Minister is cozying up to the Polish government and in a way helping them with revisionism of the Holocaust. And also what kind of representations you're going to make to the Polish ambassador here about this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tal. It's not something we've actually discussed, but I'm happy to take it forward with Marius and discuss and get back to you. Thank you. Thank you. Andrew.
And Andrew Gilbert, Movement for Reform Judaism. Whilst hearing Peter Baum's comments about his campaign, I would urge the board to be cautious. The Irish action is about, and it's misnamed, and I think there's different politics and PR. They specifically are looking at goods coming from the settlements. So it is when they use the word BDS settlements, it is somewhat different, and we might choose to hear it that in different ways. And many people, please, I'm not...
Can we please have some respect for someone speaking? You can tell him afterwards you disagree, but let him get his statement out, please.
For ages in our community, we were very careful about what we spoke about outside the Green Line and how as a board we reacted. I'm not questioning that there is considerable questions over the Irish legislation and how it's portrayed. However, there are people inside our community who would also very strongly advocate around goods from settlements and how that's seen into, and the board needs to be careful before throwing itself into the middle of a campaign and taking a line on this which splits our community.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Jonathan.
Jonathan Goldblum, Merci Kerdas. Well, I'm very upset at the moment. I hear a lot of talk about Holocaust and memorials, etc. Today's paper, the United States is furious with Britain because they are undermining the boycott of Iran. Iran, in a few words, and her friends, want to destroy Israel. They are doing things all the time to bring this about. They're increasing their military threat. There's a real threat of another Holocaust. And what on earth is the Jewish Board of Deputies doing on behalf of the Jewish community to complain or make some real stir about a disgrace that the British, who after all, and I said this to Jack Straw when he was a foreign minister, came to Britain, France and Germany were appeasing Iran. Well, Britain, France and Germany should be the first people to know. Where has all this appeasement got us in the last 10, 20 years? And it's completely hypocritical. It's done for commercial reasons, the same reason that the Tory government before the war was quite happy to deal with Hitler. They said about Hitler keeps his promises, they all keep their promises. The Labour people in Israel said that the Assad keeps his promises, therefore we could give back the Golan. Now it's about time the Jews actually stirred themselves and did something instead of this kind of nice, comfortable debating society. The board will be judged in what we do about this.
Thank you. Did you have a question?
Thank you.
What is the board doing about it?
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you. Paul.
Yeah. Paul Edlin, Glasgow Jewish Representative Council. Sheila and President, about two plenaries ago, I raised the issue of deputies attending meetings with ambassadors and MPs, etc., from the International Division and actually from the floor of the plenary. I noticed in your report today that I didn't see that any deputies or members of your division had attended any of the meetings at any of the embassies. I see Marius Bishop, who I see is a very capable person, but he is a member of staff. I saw none of your division attending any meetings with him other than yourself. Now, it begs the question, if the staff are doing all this work which was previously done by deputies, why have an international division? What's the point? We discussed this and it was going to be looked at. There should be members of the division or vice presidents attending all these meetings with MPs and ambassadors. Now, Mr. Bishop, Senior Vice President Kopolovitz mentioned the visit to the dinner by Marius Bishop. Normally that would be attended by the President or an honorary officer. Why are the staff doing this? It begs the question, as I raised before, and still there has been no change, that the staff are intruding into the work of the deputies. It's not right. They have their role, the deputies have a role, and they're not just here to rubber stamp the staff actions month upon month. There must be changes, and we raised it 2 plenaries ago.
Right, I think the best way to deal with this, before anyone claps, before anybody claps, I think let's deal with the example that was given. So Marius went to have a meeting with the Israel desk officer, and it's just been put that a member of the board staff or an honorary officer should accompany him. And I think you ought to actually understand what meetings
President, that's not what I said.
Might involve.
That's not the issue. The issue is in general.
Let's just give an example. Let's give an example. We keep hearing about Marius, and he's here. So in the community briefing, there was an example of going to see the desk officer at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. So Marius introduced himself to the new junior desk officer at the Foreign and Commonwealth Officer called Jennifer Chandler, and he explained to her what the Board of Deputies is and what it is about. He confirmed our position on Brexit, the basic threats to the Jewish community, and he established a relationship with the junior desk officer. It's not appropriate for the president of the board or even the vice president of a board, for example, to go and have these sorts of meetings. It has to be clear that if there is a meeting at ministerial level or an MP, then the president or a vice president may go. But there's many levels of government and there's many levels of civil service, and we have a professional staff team. We are going to have some open days very shortly where people can come and meet the staff, but it needs to be clear that the board employs professional staff. These aren't people that have just been taken off the streets. And they should be respected for their ability, for their experience, and the work that they do. And I think it must be quite demoralising for somebody to be sitting here having heard all this today, and we should also show respect to our senior staff team.
Could I, President, could I just have a quick supplementary just to say that the point was
Thank you.
It was not just that issue, that one issue, it's the division in general.
Thanks.
Robert Stone, Fisher Reformed Synagogue. The passage you read was a perfect illustration of what Paul was trying to say. An official of the board meant a junior desk officer. A board civil servant met a government civil servant. If who is being met is a minister or the representative of the government being the ambassador, we expect an elected official to attend. Meeting officials is exactly what every official should do. The most junior official in the board can meet officials, but officials meet officials. An elected representative meet either elected representatives or ambassadors who are the representative of their national government. That's the point Paul is making.
Yes, and during the week, for example, I had met the Hungarian Secretary of State, and Marius accompanied me, absolutely. There's no question. I mean, that was a meeting and a half, as you will have read.
Malvin.
Malvin Benjamin, Hendon United Synagogue. I'm not going to intervene in this internecine conflict over who is representing and who is speaking to ministers or senior officials. From time to time, I think it is worthwhile to give credit to the board for something that they do. When I looked at the agenda, I saw that we are being addressed by the ambassador to Albania. I thought, what on earth is that for? I cannot understand why the ambassador to Albania should speak to the board until I came to this meeting. And I'm bound to say, most people here, I am sure, knew nothing whatsoever about Albania. Maybe they knew that the capital was Tirana, but not much other than that. And you come to this board meeting and you look at the pictures and you see that the efforts that were made during the war in so many places in Albania and places which did not exist outside Albania, where they strove to save the Jewish community and individual Jews. They are entitled, if I may say so, to our thanks, to our gratitude, and to the credit that the board is making to acknowledge this situation. I do not recall, in all my years at the board, anything quite like this has taken place, and I think it represents and gives much credit to the President and the honorary officers that they have sought to bring to our notice exactly what happened in a part of the world where most people knew nothing so far as the Jewish community is concerned. We are very grateful for your efforts.
Thank you. Yes, Brian.
Robert Sachs, Belsize Square Synagogue. Madam President, Paul Edlin raised issues, fundamental issues that have been concerning me and other deputies for some time. Deputies, when you leave here at the end of the day, ask yourselves, what have you achieved? What has been accomplished? I have to ask myself what we're doing here. There is no accountability. To the heart of the matter is accountability. What role do the deputies themselves play in the policies of the Board of Deputies? It's very interesting this morning that we have these banners up, and there's nothing there about Israel. It concerns me very much. I think building bridges is very important. I'm sorry, Madam President, if I'm boring you, but this is an important issue. There is no accountability. I speak for certain members of my congregation, and there is a feeling that the Board of Deputies is not playing an active role. I don't hear speaking up for Israel very often, and I think there should be more education. I'm not making a very positive contribution. I'd like to do so. I could do so by proposing things that we could do, preparing for the assault on Shechita. Judaism is a religion that is...
You're on amber, Robert.
...cutting edge of animal welfare. Madam President, my question is this: what is the role of the deputies at this meeting? Thank you.
I think you've made a very, very sweeping statement, and I think that you've failed to recognise any of the good work that everybody has done here, and I think a lot of people may be offended by what you've just said. I think also there's another deputy for your constituency. Perhaps we'll hear from that deputy next time. And I'm not detracting one bit from the fantastic exhibition that we've got here today and the coming of the Albanian ambassador to address the board. I don't think you should seek to suggest that we should be having an exhibition on Israel today when we're looking at what these people did for Jews in the Holocaust. Your time is up. Thank you very much. You're not required to come to the stand. Next, please.
Thanks, David. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Well, my question is...
Can you name and constituency, please, David?
David Berens, JNF UK.
Thank you.
My question is, why shouldn't we support the campaign started by Peter Baum? The reality is that the campaign to the legislation to boycott goods from the so-called settlements is anti-Semitic, it's discriminatory. Where's the campaign to boycott goods from Western Sahara, Northern Cyprus? It doesn't exist. It's only because it's targeted at Jews living in Israel. The settlements in any peace agreement will be incorporated in Israel. This is a fantasy by the left. It shows why most Israelis treat Jews in the diaspora with contempt. At the end of the day, Israel is the Jewish homeland. It's the heartland. We should support it. And we should support any campaign which exposes the discriminatory BDS as anti-Semitic, as discriminatory. It's probably illegal under European law, and the more the Board of Deputies can do to back Israel to the hilt, it should be doing.
Thank you, Tal. Thank you, David. Sorry, Ido.
Hi, Ido Ben Shaul, Movement for Reform Judaism. I want to make a very sweeping comment, if I may. I think that some of us start to forget that we are a representative organization. There are 300 and something, or whatever is the number of deputies sitting here, and not all of them can be involved in the day-by-day work of the board when the board is representing the Jewish community towards various agencies. This is exactly the reason why we have professional staff, and we should respect what the professional staff is doing. Now, going back to commenting on the point that Marie made a minute ago, when Marius creates a link to an embassy, we should applaud it and not criticize him for it. When he does that, he starts always by having personal meetings with appropriate people and climb his way up very patiently until he gets to a higher level. Now, don't think for one second that Marius is working in a vacuum. Marius is updating both the chairman of the division and myself as the vice chair on almost a daily basis. When appropriate, one of us would come to a meeting and definitely represent the board from the bottom up. And I think it's a bit unfair to make these comments about the way the staff is working. It's true that there are some issues of staff sometimes doing things which may need to include more involvement from the ground, but this is definitely not the case in the international division. We are working together as a team, and Marius is a very important member of this team. Thank you.
Thank you, Ido. Thank you.
You'll be the last question
Denise.
for international. Thank you.
Well, please allow me a bit of latitude. Denise Lester, South Hampstead Synagogue. I've sat here and listened to the exchanges throughout, and I'm obviously concerned that the content of this meeting will be ultimately edited and put up on YouTube. And I would say that I don't think it should go up tomorrow. But I actually think that in view of some of the personal opinions that have been expressed by by deputies on certain issues, and there was reference to a cozying up question which Sheila came back and said we'll look into it. My concern is that there could be an intimation by not overtly batting that back, that the board then itself has implicitly consented to that particular comment. And I'm going to say quite overtly to the deputies that we are now no longer being live streamed, we are being filmed. You're on an amber card, deputies, because basically I think there needs to be some media training and also some risk management, and we need a lecture from a defamation lawyer or a libel lawyer, because to the whole deputies, because frankly we've had the chief rabbi saying we represent the community, we are leaders and we should lead, and the intemperate language in part and also the exchanges do us no favours as a community. I am concerned that, frankly, I think we need to build into the board's expenditure effectively somebody looking at it from a libel hat like you would libel read on a newspaper. And I think that also there needs to be some sensible moderation of deputies' personally expressed views. We are adults, and you know, the exchanges also are disrespectful.
You're on
Thank
red.
you.
Sorry, Denise.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I think.
Okay.
Sorry. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry, Adrian. Yeah.
You haven't said anything controversial at all. The risk management group has been and is looking at this very question, and I must remind deputies from across the spectrum that you don't have parliamentary privilege or any other air cover in what you say as an individual here. So you stand or fall on what you say, particularly if it's broadcast, but we ourselves are looking at and can I just say something, answer your question? That's a point of detail. The fact is that we have been looking at it, we are looking at it. In fact, it's an item on the agenda of the risk management group's meeting this week. So it's not just the executive that's been looking at it, we actually are looking at it properly and in detail. I just want to remind deputies that, you know, on your head be it if you say something that's actionable, because, and don't get the board in trouble, for goodness sake. Bear in mind that we may have a liability as, in effect, the publisher or disseminator of what you say. I'll say one other thing. I think some of you, and this is not about who should be doing what, it really is not. I don't want to get involved in that. But please do not underestimate how highly qualified, educated, and experienced and skilled our professional staff are. I come up against them all the time because I'm dealing with operational issues. There's no point in denigrating them because, you know, you don't realize how, sometimes we don't realize how lucky we are with some of those people. Those people are real creme de la creme people. They really are, to a woman and a man, and I know them individually. So treat them with some respect, because you wouldn't like to be publicly attacked for your competence in the way that some of you are doing. And this is not about who should be doing what.
Thank you. Adrian.
Adrian Cohen, Highgate United Synagogue. Just first of all, the issue of accountability was raised, and speaking as someone involved in many Jewish organisations, this has got to be one of the most accountable organisations that exists. I mean, you have an executive that has to present in front of 300 people, and as we've seen this morning, anyone can come up to the microphone and pose a question or a challenge. I mean, how more accountable does it get than that? On top of that, you've got the divisional meetings, of course, where issues can be raised and discussed. So it's a very accountable structure. Nothing is perfect. But the idea that people can't be held to account in this organisation, I think, is quite risible. The other point I wanted to make was that perhaps we should spend less time challenging who went to what meeting and think more about what we as individuals can do. So, you know, a few weeks ago I went to see my MP with one of the local rabbis in the constituency where I live. There's no reason why all the deputies here can't regularly go and see their own MPs or their councillors. The fact is there's a huge amount of work that can be done to promote the interests of the Jewish community. And I think that it'd be one thing if all the deputies here are highly energised and were making the most of their position to promote the interests of the community. But my sense is that, you know, all of us, including myself for that matter, could do a lot more to promote the board and to promote the community. So I think really we should be looking at ourselves, seeing what we can do, rather than just, it seems, sort of having a go at people for what they've done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just add to that last board meeting I mentioned that I'd been to see the United Synagogue Rabbinic Council, and all the rabbis, as I said then, are waiting for the deputies to contact them so that the deputies can discuss how better they can represent their community and the Board of Deputies. And during the week you will all be getting a deputy communal engagement form so that you can let us know how you've got on, and we will put various things on the form that will be very helpful. And then deputies can also show us and other deputies how they are contributing, because you're not here as wallpaper. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what you deputies can produce. And we will expect as a minimum one event per year organised with your shawl. So I hope that you will give that your support when you get the deputy engagement forms.
Thank you.
We'll have to be fairly quick,
Yes.
or we won't have much time.
Can we make Jonathan the last question or comment, please? Thank you. Yes, name and constituency, please.
Internationals never had so many questions.
Okay. Ruth Hart, Bournemouth Reformed Synagogue. Is there a legal way, especially addressing our president, in which we could publish a disclaimer concerning personal views of deputies as opposed to the board, so that alternative opinions, not just mine, but those of whom I disagree with, can still be spoken? Because I'm rather afraid that we could be stifled, and even though I've heard a few things this morning which I disagreed, but I do and advocate people being able to speak respectfully, but there must be a way of differentiating between individuals and the board as a whole, so that we don't have to be edited, redacted or censored.
Can I just explain? Nobody's here to stifle free speech or opinion, but individuals can be liable for defamatory statements and actions, and if the board transmit that via live streaming, then the board can also be responsible. So we both have responsibility. So it's something that we're looking at, and I hope that we'll have your support to do so, but you just need to be conscious that all of you have responsibility, and I'm afraid you can't just put a waiver on the board's website for either yourselves as deputies or us as the board, and we have to be very measured in what we say, and we have to really think about how we present ourselves as deputies. So that is something that we are looking at and are very conscious of.
Thank you. Jonathan.
Jonathan Davis, Golders Green Synagogue. If this is the report of the International Division, can I ask a question on that? I didn't see anything in this report on the Belgian anti-Shikita legislation. Could you tell us what the board is doing about that?
Thank you. At this moment in time, I've not been briefed on that, I have to say, but we will get back to you to any action that we are taking. Thank you.
I think the Belgium, on the ground in Belgium, they're trying to now go through the courts to bring a challenge. I understand that Shikita UK were aware some time before that this situation could happen in Belgium, and through the European Jewish Congress, we're giving what support we can on the ground, but I think there's going to be a challenge through that route.
More to add on that, but David Katz, who is the board's medical advisor and sits on the Defence Division, can pick up anything outside of the meeting if you want to.
Thank you, David. Right, that's the international report. Thank you, Sheila. Could Amanda please now present the defence report?
Thank you, Marie. Firstly, just to come back on Lionel's question about the dates of the Defence Division meetings, we have 8 meetings set for each year, 8 formal meetings set. We meet about every 5 weeks, and we try to time them before board meetings. Sometimes that's not been possible. We also have extra meetings, so we do meet regularly, and we're in touch often in between meetings. I'm sorry that we haven't met we haven't had a formal meeting between. We did have a meeting after the last plenary meeting on the 20th of January, but that was on a one-item discussion. The first thing I want to say is a couple of points that, to go into a couple of points that in a bit more detail than were on the report. The first is to say formally a big thank you to our medical advisor, David Katz, who gives an enormous amount of support to myself and to Daniel Elton, who works on religious freedoms for the board.
David also does fantastic work on campus as well. So David is extremely talented. So he should stand up so we can all see him for any new deputies. Where are you, David? Come on. He's right at the back. Thank you.
The reason why I particularly call out David today is because over the last month we've been working hard on several issues that we've been calling on his expertise. Firstly, on medical examiners. For deputies' awareness, in April 2019, it's planned that all NHS trusts in England and Wales will introduce the role of medical examiners, and their role will be to review all hospital deaths. However, our research has shown that very few trusts currently have medical examiners in place, and so it's unlikely that this will be fully operational by the 1st of April. We've sent a briefing to all regional deputies where this will take effect, and we're in touch with all the main burial societies on a regular basis to keep them in touch with the situation and what's happening. But if any deputies want us to arrange a conversation with your local burial society, please be in touch with Daniel Elton, and either Daniel or David will be happy to have a conversation. Of course, what that means is that if there is no medical examiner in your local NHS trust, the current coronial system will remain in place. And this week, David, Daniel, Eleanor Platt, Eleanor Lind, and I had a constructive meeting with the Chief Coroner to follow up from my recent letters to him relating to issues we had on the Chief Coroner's recent annual report. We've agreed some follow-up actions which we'll keep you informed of, and he committed to keep us in touch with progress on those issues. On the 2nd of May, there'll be local elections, and there are more than 25 local authorities with more than 500 Jewish residents, and we'll be focusing on these by approaching candidates in the elections and encouraging them to back our Jewish manifesto for local government. We'll be reaching out to the rep councils, particularly in Manchester, Leeds, the North East, and in Bournemouth for help in this regard. If you'd like to approach your local candidates and get them to back our manifesto, please again contact the board and the professional staff team. Remember, it's not only where you live or where your shul is based that matters, but where your shul has members, so please be in touch. 2 final things. On Tuesday, the report stage of the organ donation bill will be heard, so please look out for that. And on Wednesday, there'll be a general debate on anti-Semitism in modern society in Parliament, so please also listen out for that. I'm happy to take any questions.
Can I just mention, in terms of housekeeping, I know that the Albanian ambassador has arrived. He's a bit early, but we're becoming pushed for time, and I've noticed about 7 people coming up to the microphone. So I'm going to have to manage time, so if people can be as concise as they can, it would be very appreciated.
David May, Leicester Hebrew Congregation. I believe that it's possibly my question to the board that precipitated this communication with regards to the medical examiner situation. As far as Leicester is concerned, we've never had a communication from the board to my burial society, not in my knowledge, and I've been chairman for 36 years. I would like to say that this is a very important matter, and I shall have further matters to address with regards to what's been going on in Leicester. We've had a pilot scheme there for nearly 2 years. We do have a medical examiner in place, and I've had meetings with him. We also have a special certificate now, which I will pass on to other regional deputies with regards to what care should be taken when a Jewish patient arrives at a hospital, regardless of whether they're going to survive or not. But I would like to just say that I'm very pleased that this has come out, although it's very, very close to the time where medical examiners are going to be installed in their places. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
I do commend the exhibition.
Ephraim Borowski, Scottish Council of Jewish Communities. I'm going to talk a little bit about my parish, if you don't mind, because it seems that nobody else in the room despite some accents, is actually aware of it. We have had medical examiners in Scotland for the last 3 years. And far from causing the problems which some people are anticipating, it has actually removed some of the delays that there previously were in arranging funerals and obtaining death certificates, because the medical review service actually is prepared to answer the telephone to junior doctors who otherwise were, for very good professional reasons, entirely risk averse. The reason I'm making that point is not just to inform you how much better life is in Scotland, although of course it is, but to make the point that the board represents, as it keeps saying everywhere, British Jews, not English Jews, and it needs to have regard to the 3 devolved administrations as well. That also arose a couple of weeks ago when the board put in a response to a Home Office consultation about divorce law, in which it said, and these were its words, it is absolutely essential to keep a 2-stage system of divorce in order to protect the recent legislation about Gittin. That appears to ignore not just the situation in Scotland, where we had Gittin legislation first and with only 1 stage, but also New York and Canada and the other administrations that the board cited at the time. And then thirdly, this will come up later, we have a separate census in Scotland where, as of now, I can tell you that it is likely there will be an ethnicity question. So my question is, what can the board do to devolution-proof everything it does?
May I answer
in terms of
part of...
Sorry, can I just mention for time management, we've got the ambassador here, so I propose that we hear these questions and then the ambassador speaks, and then we revert back to the rest of our meeting, because we can be here till 1:30. Otherwise, I'm concerned that he won't be able to stay, and we're a long way from finishing.
Okay, I'm going to ask Eleanor to respond on...
May I just...
Efraim's
Eleanor
point.
Lind, New London Synagogue.
And chair of the Family Law Group.
I chair the Family Law Group of the board. Ephraim doesn't come to the meetings of the Family Law Group of the board, but he gets every piece of information that we get. He didn't come to the meeting at which we discussed the divorce reform aspect, but afterwards, once we had sent him the draft, he told us that in Scotland, and many of you won't be aware, but divorce law and family law in Scotland is totally different from that in England and Wales. He didn't, and I'm no expert in the Scottish law, and the person who should be, I think, Deanna Levine, she wasn't at that meeting either. He told us that there was a difference in the divorce law, at which point we sent an amended sentence which covered it to government. If he had told us beforehand about this aspect, it would have gone in initially. So I do object most strongly to what Ephraim has said about the meeting and the representations that we made to government about divorce law. Thank you.
John Lawrence, West London Synagogue. In late November, the Times newspaper published a leader under the ambiguous title of Bible bashing, in which they said that the European Jewish Congress had suggested that future editions of the Bible should contain warnings in the margins about anti-Semitic passages, of which there are plenty. Those of you who went to the book launch of Bruce Thompson's book earlier this week will recognize some of this. What I'd like to ask is, are we in touch with the department or the European Jewish Congress about this matter of the anti-Semitism that is, in many ways, right in the sacred texts of the Christian Bible? I know there are many good things about Christianity. I know a lot about Christianity, but I do think that that's a matter that needs to be paid attention to the atavism in anti-Semitism doesn't come from nowhere. It is fed, and this is one of the streams it's always been fed by, possibly one of the worst.
Can I just mention that I'm chair of the Council of the European Jewish Congress, so we are very much in touch and working together with our European colleagues.
And equally, just to reiterate that the division's plan is looks at anti-Semitism wherever it arises, and thank you for highlighting that particular example.
Yeah, David Seelow, Brighton Hove Progressive Synagogue. Two questions. One is, did you know, in your report you mentioned about local elections, did you know that there are local elections in Brighton and Hove in May where the whole council is up for election, and we have a significant Jewish community in Brighton and Hove, and therefore you need to involve candidates in that particular council as well. My second point is something that's been raised by one of my members of the synagogue. It's not a programme I particularly watch, but this particular member has raised about a programme called an ITV programme called Family Guy, which is a United States programme, and he has been correspondence with me for some time and with the ITV about the potential, some of the Jewish content he deems to be anti-Semitic, and I wonder whether there has been any discussions with ITV about this particular programme and some of the content. I've reviewed some of it on YouTube, and I have to say it isn't particular. It's an American humour that can be deemed in the British context to be potentially anti-Semitic.
Thank you. Firstly, thank you for the point about Brighton, and absolutely, please, we will be in touch, and you should do everything you can do to reach out to your candidates about using the local government manifesto. I'm not personally, I'm not a fan. I don't know Family Guy. I've never seen it, so and it's not been brought to my attention before. So we will look at it. Thank you.
Thank you. Simon Gordon, Clonefesh Masorti Synagogue.
Your question, and then I think the ambassador is going to have to come in. We can't keep him waiting any longer, and then we'll return to the questions. So behind you, does everyone want to sit down? Because I'm going to take the ambassador next. We can't keep him waiting outside any longer. So if you do your question, and then you can return to the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice President, for your update on medical examiners. 2 plenaries ago, in light of a 3-week delay to burial, which affected a member of my community, I asked you if the board could circulate published guidelines to all deputies on investigations either by coroners or by medical examiners in order that we know and we can advise members of our communities how to intervene to prevent delays to burial. And you kindly repeated my suggestion to the plenary. So I want to ask what progress has been made on the drafting and publication of such guidelines.
Thank you.
David, thank you for that. David Katz, who's the best person to answer the question.
Thank you. I don't want to delay the Albanian ambassador anymore. I just think I need to answer a couple of questions. One is, thank you very much, Ephraim. We are very conscious that what we're talking about is England and Wales, and we make certain that that our discussions relate to that, and the reports actually relate to that. Second, with regard to Leicester, thank you very much for that question. Thank you very much for that contribution. With regard to Leicester, it is absolutely undoubted that Leicester is the model. The reason why Leicester is partly the model was because of representations made by Ellen and myself and David Fry many years ago to say that we wanted the model to be Leicester because there was a Jewish community which was well organized and there was a big Muslim community that is served by that. And we are in close contact with the Leicester medical examiner as well, and we're very pleased to acknowledge the enormous contribution he has made to harmony and interfaith harmony, and indeed to this area in Leicester, and equally what the contribution the community has made. However, Leicester, on our survey, and we appear to have better data than either the Chief Coroner or the Department of Health at the moment, which doesn't surprise one when you consider what's happening with Brexit. But we have better information, and Leicester is one of the has given us a detailed answer, which includes reference to cooperation with you. So Leicester is not a problem. Other places are. However, we have to remember that some places are saying this is a haphazard, cack-handed way of introducing the system, and we're not going to cooperate until we get proper support and proper financial support and proper adequate backing support from the Department of Health. So there's a range of possibilities that are going to happen. The take-home message for deputies, please read the document that we've given, particularly to the regional deputies, where there are smaller numbers of Jews, and please come back to the board if any problems arise, and don't wait for 3 days after the problems arise. Give us a notification early, and we'll see what we can do about it if any problems arise. But several of the major Jewish areas are not going to have medical examiners because they say the system is unworkable as it's being put forward. So that's with regard to that situation. With regard, therefore, to the notification of deaths, I'm afraid we're in limbo. We raised these questions with the Chief Coroner. The Chief Coroner told us about steps he was going to take, and it's an ongoing situation. We appear to be stuck, as much of the rest of the country, in relationship to Brexit, because, of course, nobody's making time for any legislation or any publication of proper guidelines for these issues at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Right, can we all give a big welcome, please, to the Albanian ambassador, Kyriano Kirko, and his wife, who have very kindly joined us today. Please, can we stand? Now, deputies, I'm very proud to ask the Albanian ambassador to the UK, Kyriako Kirko, to shortly address our meeting. He graduated at the University of Tirana, and he has had many varied and senior roles, which include being Secretary General of the Council of Ministers in the Republic of Albania, and he has also previously been the ambassador to the Netherlands and is the ambassador in the UK since 2016. The Yad Vashem exhibition that features the role Albanian Muslims played in saving Jews during the Shoah is a small beacon of light in the darkness of the Holocaust. The exhibit, titled Love Your Neighbour, was originally supposed to be hosted by the Centre for Islamic Understanding in London, in Golders Green, but the mosque was forced to abandon the plan after facing pressure from hardline extremists over its cooperation with an Israeli institution. Therefore, we are so proud to be hosting this important exhibition, which celebrates the heroism of Muslim Albanians who rescued Jews during the Shoah. It is a little-known history and one which we are happy to be able to share with deputies, who can take these stories back to your communities all over the country. These are acts of heroism and are a model for how Muslims and Jews could coexist today, challenging anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hatred together. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Dear President Marie van der Zyl, dear deputies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm deeply honored being here today representing the people of Albania and the government of Albania. I am proud to be here today because the history of the protection of the Jewish population in Albania is exceptional, is an excellent example of humanity, and a lesson for the future generations. The relation between Albanians and the Jewish community are centuries old. archaeological evidence suggests the Jewish presence since the 1st century AD. In the south of Albania, we can find the ruins of the oldest synagogue of the Balkan. The Jewish community, much like the other community present in Albania, has never been considered foreigners, although their number has never been of considerable amount. Jewish community in my country have been always respected, prized for their model of living, as well as for the wisdom that characterized them. The US ambassador who served in Albania from 1930 to 1934, Mr. Herman Bernstein, who was Jewish himself, wrote, "There is no trace of discrimination against the Jewish population in Albanian history. Albania happened to be one of the rare lands in Europe today where religion prejudices and hate do not exist." The Holocaust is unfortunately the darkest chapter in modern history. At the end of World War II, the world experienced a macabre carnages. 6 million Jews were exterminated in concentration camps during systematic and inhuman persecutions. Albanians choose not to stay indifferent during the unprecedented atrocities of Holocaust. They choose the right side, the side of life. But what made Albania different from the rest of Europe in regard to the protection of Jewish population? Why they put their own lives in risk, jeopardize the life of their children and relatives, meanwhile others turn their back on them, close their homes, or even worse, turn information to the Nazis of the whereabouts of their hidings? Why the number of Jewish people in Albania after the war was 10 times bigger than the number before the war? Why, according to Yad Vashem accounts, there is no single case of Jewish person being handed to the Nazis authority by the Albanians? There are some who attempt to give a religion answer to this question. The hypothesis is refused by the fact that the Jewish population were welcome in the homes of Albanians belonging to the Muslim religion as well as Christian Catholic and Christian Orthodox. There is also an interesting historic fact explaining that the lack of religion affinity to the protection of Jewish population in Albania. In 1943, Hermann O. Bacher, a leading Nazi situated in Albania, summoned representative of all the religion communities. He demanded them the list of Jewish people they are hiding, as well as the list of the gold they were having. They handed over their own gold, but not the list of Jewish people. There is only one explanation to this occurrence: Albanian tradition. To an Albanian, a foreigner is not an outsider, but a guest. And the honorable host make themselves available when the guest is in time of need. In the time of need, what was perhaps more necessary than ever was trust. In Albania, we have a special word for trust, one that is not be found in the English dictionary, besa. The special Albanian word is not only centuries old, written in medieval codes of honor and passed down through generation, but it is also in our DNA. Besa means many things: trust, faith, honoring one's promise, keeping one's word. When the Albanians gave their Besa to the Jewish people, they gave it with a feeling of uncompromised protection for their guests. The contribution by my fellow Albanians and find the price and gratitude of the authority of State of Israel. As a young diplomat in 1994, I had the distinctive honor of being part of Albanian delegation to meet then a foreign minister, a Nobel Prize winner, Shimon Peres. On his welcoming speech, among other things, he said, "Being a small or large country is not measured by the extent of a territory, nor by a number of population, but by the country's values and the education of the society." Ladies and gentlemen, remembering the Holocaust is a chance for deep reflection on the divisive remarks they may give rise to the hatred of the others whom we identified as different from ourselves. We remember how everything started from a speech. A false narrative was created about the Jewish people. Speech stirred up divisions, then turned into hatred. Prejudices became stereotype, and the unimaginable became reality. Blind hatreds against Jews leading to their persecution. Today, any form of intolerance, being it anti-Semitic, violent extremism, or otherwise, constitute a threat to our democracy, civil values, and security at large. The simple act of remembrance would be futile if we do not educate the younger generation to respect the international values of human rights. Today is more important than ever to educate by the positive examples. Being a cohesive community, one where we do not discriminate, categorize, or shoot the door on the other because they have different beliefs, different race, different political opinions, or different sexual orientation. Future generations can give their best and learn to accept one another as one. I thank you very much.
Because you'll get a vote of thanks and then I'll take you out.
Mr. Ambassador, it's my unique honor to thank you on behalf of the Board of Deputies, and more so on behalf of the Jewish people, for coming and addressing us today and highlighting an historical episode that your country should be also proud of, and we are grateful for that. This exhibition, organized by Yad Vashem, highlighted this episode and allowed 300 deputies this morning to visit the exhibition, to be impressed. And were you here at earlier, you would have heard the incredible admiration and compliments expressed by the deputies for this act of courage and for this episode that was little known before this morning to many of us. This exhibition can and should serve as a bridge building between faith groups. The fact that there were extreme voices that made it was cancelled the first time round should not deter us. Us, the Board of Deputies, you, the Albanian Embassy, to make sure that this exhibition is widely spread across the country. Mosques, Muslim schools, exhibition places, councils. The world should know that when humanity was threatened, you came trumps, and that should be a model for future for all of us to hear. I am again grateful for the time and please convey our gratitude to your nation, and thank you very much for addressing us today.
volunteers please return to the microphone who were asking questions on the defence report? Just for housekeeping, the latest that we can finish here is 1:30. So we have got the defence report, the community and division report, and the President's statement. So that's 25 minutes. So it's also up to you how you manage your time and what priority you want to give. So I suggest that you only come to the microphone if you have a very important question that you feel needs to be answered. And I apologise, but we're going to run out of time otherwise. Thank you.
Dorish Metterling, New West End Synagogue. I'm only going to pose a half question, but I have some good news. As you probably know, the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism has been doing the rounds and people have been urged to adopt it. I think over 100 local councils have adopted it in Britain, including, believe it or not, Bradford District Council. And the good news is that my own borough, the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, in which I live in the northern bits, adopted this motion fully, unconditionally, NEMCON, in December of last year. What do you think of that? That's my question.
The sunshine is coming straight through, and so if I'm not making eye contact, it's purely because I can't see a thing. I'm delighted that Kensington and Chelsea have adopted it, and encourage all deputies where your local councils haven't yet adopted it to reach out and encourage them to do so.
Mervyn Smith, Sutton. I'm not sure whether this covers defence or maybe a bit of international, but in light of all the circumstances, and perhaps it's appropriate speaking after the Albanian ambassador, that we have the capacity to be able to prepare a booklet which would provide information, perhaps to give that detail to those perpetrating anti-Semitism within this country. I'm very sensitive to the use of the words occupation as far as the West Bank, Judea, Samaria is concerned, and also the use of the word apartheid. Many people use it, even within the Jewish community, in terms of occupation of the West Bank, but history seems to suggest that there were many kibbutzim on the West Bank before the establishment of the state. There might well be a dispute with regard to the extension of those settlements, but nonetheless, history cannot be denied. I would equally state with regard to the situation in the whole of the West Bank, people talk about occupation, but we have 92% that was offered to the Arabs back in 2000 but rejected. Can we not prepare a booklet that would encompass information, historical fact, that would enable some of these prejudices to be eliminated very quickly?
Mervyn, thank you. It's actually what you're describing is something that we're looking at within the Defence Division at the moment, and we're in the process of setting up a legal challenges working group to produce fact sheets on what you've described and several other issues. And so over the course of the next several months, we'll be looking at all the legal issues to present back to people a formal challenge, and to provide that both to on the website, but also to journalists and to anyone else that's interested in that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just reminding everyone we've only got 20 minutes, so only if your question is really important.
Michael Reich, Mosaic Reform. I found it absolutely incredible that Good Morning Britain decided to have a poll on the question of whether Israel should be considered for the Eurovision Song Contest. I believe that this suggestion was also put to BBC, who refused to put that forward. I just would like to know, what is the board doing to speak to all the media companies to find out what is behind and how can it be possible that such an anti-Semitic, and it is totally anti-Semitic suggestion, can be put on major television stations. What also I was very concerned about is to see they had a supposed poll of the people who actually responded, to find it was actually only 47% in favour of continuing to have the Eurovision Song Contest in Israel. Very, very worrying.
I'll answer very briefly. I mean, clearly we are in regular contact with all the major media, the mainstream media, around these issues, and really to help continue to raise awareness for all the issues that you describe. It was disgraceful, the Good Morning Britain poll, and they did take it down because they did come to realise that it was clearly a much more complicated issue than something with a yes/no answer. It's not good enough, and as I say, we are in regular contact and continue to be.
Ben Crown, Limud. In the Defence Division report, there was a line item about David Ward, who's a notorious figure I don't need to remind all the deputies about, and who purports to have been readmitted to Liberal Democrats. You said in your report that the Liberal Democrat head office have said that he's not been readmitted, but you only need to go to the local council website to see he's being purported to be the deputy leader of the Lib Dem group in Bradford. Is this being taken up further with Lib Dem head office?
What's in the report is what is the statement that I made at the time, and it is true. We spoke to the office at that time, and it was not the case at that time, and we continue to be in touch.
It needs to be really short. We are down to 17 minutes.
Really short. Sharon Bannister, Jewish Representative Council, Manchester. You said earlier, and this is a general one for all of you, that there would be a meet the staff occasion day so everybody could meet the staff. Is that possible, please, for it to be on a day when all the deputies meet so that regional deputies also have that opportunity? Because if it's on an evening midweek in London, we wouldn't have that opportunity.
That's something we obviously will take on board, but we want to have all the deputies to have the ability to meet the staff team. Can Edwin now please present the Communities Education and Interfaith Division report? I'm
delighted to present the report. As you can see from the 2 packed pages, a lot of visits and a lot of meetings. I do apologize that the content might be at some time, I accept the criticism that at times it's a diary rather than a meaningful reading, but please bear with us, it will get better. On the 5th of March meeting, we will ratify the triennial plan that we have worked very, very hard to actually make it a detailed one, a strategy and a commitment. At the moment, it's going through the professional staff and other stakeholders, but it will be presented to our division first in anticipation to present it to the board at a later stage. I would like to tell you that we are now headhunting from the deputies for specific skill sets that we are missing for this incredibly wide-ranging division. We have appointed equality champion. I'm very, very delighted that Sally Patterson has taken on this job, and we will present a bigger thing about the equality champion, the role of it, and Sally Patterson in our next meeting. I also would love to have people like Deputy Miriam Fabi, for example, coming in and saying, Hineni, I'm here. This is what I could do. This is what I've done. And if the division can use us, I'm here for you. And that's really what we encourage. We will look at the deputy skill reports, but please, 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 if you feel that you could contribute to the division with a specific skill set or a specific task, write to me and to Anthony Silkoff and just say, this is what I can do if you need my skills. This is, I would just want to thank Andrew Gilbert, who prepared with me and Richard the plan, for the triennial plan that was now going around, and you'll see from its detailed how much work has been put into it. I also want to thank the professional staff again, to echo Marie. They are incredibly professional and do so many things that I'm actually overwhelmed with the depth and breadth of what they do on a normal day. And they deserve your encouragement, they deserve your support. And this exhibition, for example, would not have happened without Anthony and Marius combining together and putting it on there. So a vote of thanks for all the deputies, for all the exposure stuff. I will be escorting the President to northern England for an interfaith visits to various Muslim groups and schools and places, and I am certain that some people will find one or two of those visits objectionable. I just want to plead with you to allow us the discretion of taking a view when we always check with communities, organizations, with the CST before we do anything. But invariably there will be one person who 20 years ago his cousin said something or another. Don't be too harsh on us. Let us use this as you don't build bridges with avid Zionists. You build it with people who once or twice miscalculated, missaid something. Give us that opportunity to work on your behalf, and we promise not to abuse it. I will not take any more time. I'm very grateful to you. If the questions are not too urgent, then allow the President to have her statement and questions to her. Thank you.
Okay, deputies can decide. Are there any urgent questions? The deputies will have to take responsibility if they use up all the time that's left. Okay.
Susan Pascoe, Nairstraw Community in Hendon. This covers both the President's statement, I would say, and Edwin's report. So since cemeteries are in your division, and it seems an omission from the President's statement, I'll say it covers both. In view of the appalling desecration at the Manchester Jewish Cemetery last weekend, with grave ruthlessly smashed open, buildings damaged, windows smashed, Sephorim burnt, CCTV stolen, do you think there's a role for the Board of Deputies in coordinating amongst cemeteries the need for security guards now, because CCTV is not sufficient and nobody is taking the initiative in organising this? So perhaps the Board of Deputies could kickstart that, and then it can be taken over by the burial societies. Thank you.
Just one more. Okay, I think Marie wanted to respond to that, but I just want to say that disused cemeteries is very much part of the division's thing, and we are also looking, we have got a small subsection which is studying all that disused cemetery, how to protect them, how to raise the funds to secure them, and this is a work in progress. But Mary, do you want to comment specifically on the Manchester one?
I just wanted to say it is work in progress, but I did issue a very firm statement of condemnation straight after the desecration of the cemetery. And we can also support to Manchester by being there also for the regional meeting. But this is a very good point that Susan has raised, and we do need to look into that further, and we will do so. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, right, we're just in terms of timekeeping. We have got 10 minutes So we've got the President's statement, but can I first of all still give the muzzle toffs, please? Barry Shine on the birth of twin grandsons, and condolences to Richard Del Monte on the very sad loss of his mother, and to Stuart MacDonald on the very sad loss of his father. As we're very short of time, I won't repeat the President's statement and we will proceed to questions, but we will be finishing in 10 minutes. Well, if no question's going to be asked, we'll have to move on to the next person. We've only got 9 minutes, probably.
Waiting for you to
get on with the question.
Jerry Lewis, Hampstead Synagogue. I come to this podium again on a similar subject as I've raised before. It is the subject of a written question for which I've had an answer which I'm dissatisfied with, and for the very simple reason that I believe it may be somewhat, and I will use my words with caution, misleading. I was Senior Vice President at the time when the board last took a decision on the key issue of the census. We had a very clear policy, fully debated. The decision that has now been taken this time round has never been reported to the board by the executive, the honorary officers, and definitely not by the division. I'm not blaming you, Mr. Shuker, but it has never been referred to. There has been a complete U-turn of policy, which the Jewish News reported last year, never reported to us, never debated by us at all. And I've even seen internal memorandum which prove it is a reversal of policy. This board is based on openness, transparency, and accountability. In this particular area, I'm sorry to say, President, you've been let down somewhat. And in the circumstances, I'm asking for a full inquiry behind the scenes so that you can yourself see what has gone wrong. And we have got to debate the issue. I don't mind if the government have been told what our policy might have been as decided by an outside organisation, not us. But one thing we've got to do is go back to the government and say we are reviewing our situation, reviewing our position, and we want to make it very clear. This board has openly, democratically debated the issue. And if it's got to be done later than planned, it's got to be done. Census is not for another 2.5 years. So we've got time to make our representations. One thing I do not think you would want to accept or tolerate, Madam President, is a situation by which deputies are being led to believe something has changed when we've never, ever had a chance to discuss it or debate it. And I'm hoping very much that you will take on board these comments which are given in friendship and not attacking anybody, but just to make sure that this board does its job as it's supposed to do. Thank you.
Just to put this into context, the question was asked for the next census in 2021. This was before I became president, it's true. Whether or not Jews identify simply by religion, or whether or not they should also identify by ethnicity. In 2007, I understand that a representation was made, although I haven't seen it by the board, that ethnicity should be considered. But if that had happened in 2021, that would actually be the first time that Jews can register themselves as Jewish outside the census question on religion. So there's not a change in policy yet because nothing has actually happened. What I'm actually told was that the Board of Deputies took advice, and it is referred to, you can all see this online, there is the Jewish News report on the 23rd of August 2018, that the Board of Deputies discussed this in depth with Jewish sociologists and analysts at the Institute for Jewish Policy Research, with whom we undertake our work. who wanted to maintain the status quo. And the reason for that is that it's very difficult for communal planning for the future to suddenly change the basis and analysis for data. So it was considered with our professional advisors, and more than that, this has been raised before and it's been reconsidered in the Communities Division and debated there, and it was concluded on the 23rd of January that the status quo should remain. So I'm not sure why we should be having an inquiry.
I'm sorry to say, Madam
So thank
President,
you for your question. I'm moving on because we are down to 5 minutes. We are down to 5 minutes. We're down to 5 minutes. Please only come if your question is of vital importance.
Martin
There are
Motz.
7 of you.
Martin Motz, Northwest Surrey Synagogue. I'd like to come back to this question as to when it's appropriate for the board to be represented by honorary officers and deputies compared to members of staff. I think the people who've been saying it's obvious it should be deputies, there's been an unspoken assumption, which is that there's a very close analogy between the way there's a relationship between the civil service and MPs and ministers. There's a very close analogy between that and the situation at the Board of Deputies. I think there is at a high level, there is an analogy, undoubtedly, but at the detailed level, I don't think there is such an analogy, because MPs, as we all know, are highly paid, and equally that they have staffs and so forth, and of course cabinet ministers are very much professional with their teams of civil servants. So there's a high level analogy, but not a low. The question is whether the honorary officers are articulating this clearly to the board, and I don't think they are. I think we need to understand that there's only a loose analogy between those two setups. And that is why, when we have a large number of unpaid deputies who are all volunteers, that there is a grey area. At the very top, it is absolutely right that it should be an honorary officer or a deputy with cabinet ministers who are doing the engagement. But for all the grey areas between, I think it's very appropriate that our full-time staff should be doing. Do you agree with me that the analogy is not as tight?
Thank
as it
you.
might
Right,
appear?
you've used up the time, so thank you. We have to now go on. I'm very sorry to my closing remarks. I'm very sorry. We are out of time. I did say to everybody, and I feel really bad, but we have to leave here at 1:30. I'm really sorry. I'm happy to stay afterwards before my next meeting to answer any questions. I am really sorry. Today, I really want to thank the Albanian ambassador for his unprecedented visit. This shows that in times of darkness, humanity can prevail, and this could be a future role model between the way that Jews and Muslims and other faiths can cooperate. And I hope that you've all had a chance to see the amazing exhibition. The Chief Rabbi came here today, and I've had great thought and regard for all his very wise words, particularly in relation to the Jewish community being like a symphony orchestra. We do need cohesion, tolerance, respect, and understanding, all working together in the Jewish community through all difficult times, and particularly, we are all very conscious of the challenges of Brexit in the impending months. So unity, respect, tolerance, even where there are differences of views, let us all work together, and let us count our blessings also for the wonderful life which we as Jews do still have here in the UK. Let us stay together to challenge anti-Semitism and racism, and take the sign of humanity that we've seen today, that this is possible if we all work together. And I'd like to thank you for all coming here today. Thank you.